In the middle of a country torn apart by wars, drought, and hunger, a massive trench is being dug. But this is not an ordinary trench. It is a lifeline, one that many hope will turn endless deserts into green farmland. This trench in northern Afghanistan is more than earth being moved. It is the digging of the future, of political power, and of relations with neighbors. That is why the Qosh Tepa Canal is not just an infrastructure project. It is a claim to water rights, a tool of agricultural policy, and a bargaining chip on the international stage. Afghanistan, landlocked in Central Asia, is a rugged beast. The Hindu Kush Mountains cut the country in two, carving dramatic valleys and plateaus. More than 80% of the land is mountainous or hilly, leaving little space for easy farming. The climate is harsh. Summers burn above 40 degrees Celsius, winters freeze, and rainfall is scarce and irregular. Only about 300 to 400 millimeters a year in most areas. Drought is a constant nightmare. In the northern plains, dust storms often turn the land into a sandy wasteland. Here, water is worth gold. Rivers like the Amu Darya and Helmand are vital, but their flow is uneven, and climate change makes it worse. Glaciers melt faster. One season brings floods, the next leaves the land dry. Afghanistan has about 57 billion cubic meters of river water each year, yet because of conflict and poor infrastructure, less than a fifth is actually used. The Amu Darya runs through the north, rising from Tajikistan, flowing into Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan before reaching the Aral Sea. For Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan, it is the backbone of their irrigation systems. These two states use about 90% of the Amu Darya's water, yet Afghanistan's legal right, set in 1946 during the Soviet period, is 9 billion cubic meters per year. In practice, the situation is much more complicated. It seems like it will become even more complicated with the canal project. With a population near 40 million, most people in Afghanistan depend on farming, but only 12% of the land is arable, and water shortages push millions into food insecurity. The World Food Programme warns that acute malnutrition is widespread in 25 of the country's 34 provinces, and without major interventions, the crisis will worsen. Against this dry land and desperate need, the Qosh Tepa project sparks both hope and tension. The idea of a giant canal is not new. It goes back to the 1970s, when Afghan planners drew up the first sketches to divert water from the Amu Darya. Under President Mohammad Daoud, it was seen as a way to strengthen northern farming. But the 1979 Soviet invasion, followed by decades of war and turmoil, pushed every big infrastructure dream aside. In 2018, the US-backed government under Ashraf Ghani revived the idea, commissioning a feasibility study with USAID help and starting some initial work, but ongoing conflicts made progress slow. After the Taliban took power in 2021, the project gained speed. In August that year, the interim Taliban government declared it the most important infrastructure plan. Construction officially began in March 2022. The Qosh Tepa Canal aims to redirect part of the Amu Darya into Afghanistan's interior, opening vast dry land to irrigation. The route starts in Koldar district of Balkh province and stretches to Ankoy district in Faryab province. The planned length is about 285 kilometers and the depth between 8 and 13 meters. The canal's capacity is projected to carry about 650 cubic meters of water per second. Once operational, the canal is expected to divert around a third of the Amu Darya's flow, about 10 billion cubic meters of water per year, into Afghanistan. This could irrigate 550,000 to 600,000 hectares of land. Millions of acres now barren could be planted with wheat, cotton, fruits, and vegetables. The Taliban leadership claims this project will make Afghanistan far more self-sufficient in food, reduce dependence on imports, and even create the chance to export. It is also expected to boost local industry, create thousands of jobs, and slow down migration. The Taliban administration chose to finance the project entirely with domestic resources. The total cost is expected to be around $200 to $300 million. To save on costs, the canal wasn't lined with concrete. Officials say that by opting for compacted soil and roller smoothing instead of concrete, they achieved significant savings. This method provides a huge reduction, about 95%, compared to the $5.5 billion that concrete lining would require. But there are question marks we'll touch on soon. The construction of the canal consists of 3 stages. The first stage, around 108 kilometers, was completed in 2023 and officially opened. This opening was presented as a giant engineering step for Afghanistan. After that, the second stage began. By 2025, excavation of the second stage had passed 90%. The Taliban says the digging is nearly complete and the third stage will soon begin. The dam and headworks that will connect the canal to the Amu Darya are also moving forward. By mid-2025, these were reported to be more than 80% finished. Originally, water was expected to flow into the canal by the end of 2024, but that deadline has slipped. Experts now believe it will not happen before 2026. International analyses suggest the entire project may only be fully functional by 2028. In other words, progress is real, but slow. Once complete, the project hopes to bring multifaceted benefits to local people and the country's economy. Irrigating hundreds of thousands of hectares means a boost in production over millions of acres and improvements in local food security. This could mean local employment, market revival, and less migration from villages to cities. Irrigated farmlands increase product variety. There could be rises in yarn, cotton, grains and such, boosting regional incomes. That would attract investments in infrastructure, markets, and logistics. Additionally, the Taliban administration believes that irrigating and greening vast barren areas is positive for climate and environment. Project officials emphasize that it will reduce frequent sandstorms in northern Afghanistan. By greening the deserts, they argue it will also prevent wind-carried dust from reaching neighboring countries. As much as it promises big hopes, the Qosh Tepa Canal project has various technical, environmental, and political question marks. The biggest technical challenge is that the canal isn't lined with concrete. Afghan officials say they'll make do with an earth canal due to costs. But there are drawbacks. When water was given to certain parts of the canal, the ground softened, leading to erosion, and collapses occurred during digging. Right now, since very little water is being released, major problems aren't happening, but there's talk of leakage and collapse risks when full-capacity water is diverted. Analysts say measures like concreting or reinforcement are essential to guarantee the canal's long-term durability. Economic challenges are big too. The planned budget for completion, $200 to $300 million, is tough even for a poor country like Afghanistan. With the current economy dealing with sanctions and banking issues, allocating this budget is hard. Moreover, the operating and maintenance costs aren't fully clear yet. Even without needing pipes and electricity, regulators, irrigation channels, and repair teams will be required along the long canal. Environmental concerns go further. Neighboring states argue that the canal will hurt the already fragile Aral Sea basin. The Aral has been shrinking for decades, and if Afghanistan diverts more of the Amu Darya, the flow to the sea will fall even further. Some environmental experts call the project a nightmare for Central Asia, warning that it could worsen one of the world's biggest ecological disasters. That is why regional politics are heating up. Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan rely heavily on the Amu Darya, and both are worried. Uzbek President Shavkat Mirziyoyev warned in 2023 that the canal will change the water balance of Central Asia. He even called for a regional commission of experts, but Afghanistan has so far ignored the proposal. Both countries use the Amu Darya intensively. Uzbekistan for cotton, Turkmenistan for farmland. They're dependent on Amu waters. If the project completes, Uzbekistan could lose about 15% of the Amu Darya water it uses, which would negatively affect its agriculture and exports. Legally, the issue is messy. Afghanistan has a Soviet-era right to 9 billion cubic meters a year, but it never signed on to later agreements like the Almaty Convention. That leaves it in a weak legal position. The Qosh Tepa Canal therefore looks like both a challenge to old treaties and a new spark of competition. Some analysts believe this project will not give the Taliban legitimacy, but will instead deepen disputes with its neighbors. Planned collaborations with Uzbekistan and other Asian countries on railways, energy and irrigation could be affected by this tense climate. In the future, even if the Qosh Tepa Canal carries water smoothly and revives Afghan farming, tensions with neighbors will need to be resolved. The Qosh Tepa Canal is a big hope, and at the same time, a big test for Afghanistan. If managed right, irrigated lands boost production, provide jobs to hundreds of thousands of people, and raise local welfare in the short term. But if there's wrong engineering, inadequate maintenance, lack of drainage, and no regional coordination, the project could leave serious damages at both local and regional levels: economic, environmental, and diplomatic. One thing is certain: whether Afghanistan's remote deserts will green up thanks to this canal will become clear in the coming years. For more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video.